morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Text Messages. I'm the parasite of the show, Rick Text. We're glad to have you here on the 31 moment, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, sorry about that. I forgot the LED lights up in the rear left-hand corner from my perspective. So from your perspective, it would be the rear right, stage left, or stage right, I guess you would call it. This is episode 35 of Text Messages, Saturday morning, May 12, 2013. 2013, that was a pretty long time ago, but, you know, not too long ago, 5 years, so, yeah, I mean, we're just rumbling through the years. Hopefully we can make it to the end of the 22nd century and not have any sort of nuclear apocalypse or mass black plague or something silly like that, but we'll see. I mean, with all the glyphosates and neonicotinoids and all the other genetic engineering that goes in our food, and you know, this Soylent product that's marketed to people, and just the pollution in inner cities, and the water, atrazine in the water, and all the other chemical runoffs, it's just the future definitely doesn't look very promising. I hate to break it to you, ladies and gentlemen, but that's just the trend we're in. And going to the Princeton Speedway last night, I did notice a dangerous trend there too. So I've probably been going there for a couple 13, 14 years, and when first going there in the late 2010, 2006, 7, 8, somewhere in that ballpark. The car count, see, there was B mods, A mods, super stock, sport compacts. Well, there wasn't sport compacts, they're called Hornets. And then there was street stocks. All the cars, with the exception of the Hornets, had V8s in them. Now, what's happening is they added a class called modified 4s, which are 4-cylinders. Then the Hornets are an official class called sport compacts. You know, they try to give them some fancy name as if they're actually legitimate. And they run regular heats and features too, whereas Hornets, they just ran some little feature after all the other cars were done. It was sort of, it was just sort of a jocular race, basically. Nobody seemed to care. Winner got $20 and a pat on the back, and that was about it. But more and more, Princeton Speedway is legitimizing 4-cylinder cars, which is it's definitely a trend downwards. They could be doing things like adding late models, or trying to get a higher car count on the A mods with rules and all that stuff, but instead they're just adding these silly, worthless classes, and it's just really sad to see. You know, not to be the old curmudgeon that whines and complains about things. See, ladies and gentlemen, maybe that's why elderly people are always typically in a negative mood, because just when you hear and read things from the 1400s, and you see, oh, everybody lived in a castle and everyone worshipped a king and a queen, and they just worked all day and didn't really do anything. So you think that must be a pretty miserable existence. But I mean, if you extrapolate it out to our existence, I mean, in America, the greatest country in the world, make America great again, we have a lot of freedoms here, and people have the rights to occupy land. You don't technically own the land. The land that I'm standing on right now, ladies and gentlemen, I do not own it. I have rights to occupy it. So there's a pretty big difference there. So if people tell you, the house is paid off though, so the bank does not own the house. Now if people tell you they own their house, they own their land, they're actually mistaken. If they have a mortgage on their house, they do not own the house. And technically, I don't really, the rights to occupy this land, it costs about $1,000 a year in property tax. So yeah, I mean, we don't really own anything. We're releasing and renting it from governmental bodies. Now you could say, well, you need taxes to pay for schools and buses and bridges and roads and all that. Usually, back in the good old days, when America was great again, those were called user fees. All the money if you're going to use the road, you're probably going to be buying gas, or you're going to be buying tires, or you're going to be buying a vehicle. So there was taxes on those items, and through that taxing and responsible spending, you're able to pay road workers to build new roads. It wasn't just property tax and income tax and all this other and fraudulent reserve tax, inflation tax, and all this other goofy stuff. So, but you know what? Who knows what the real reasoning is? You know, it's a burgeoning population or just resource depletion, just as the food supply becoming corrupted and adulterated. There's a lot of things that could be the culprit for that. But you know, a great America is everybody's just works hard, morally upstanding people. Everyone gets along. They probably speak the same language so they can communicate with each other. They have the same beliefs and philosophies as far as the afterlife and being a good neighbor and all that other goofy stuff. So, I mean, if you want to build a strong society, you have to have some core similarities. And then from there, you can diverse and become your own individual and everything like that, too. And that's not to say that's not to say you necessarily have to believe and ardently follow the same religion or anything goofy like that, or speak the same accent or nothing. You know, it's nothing like that. It's just, if you can have basic communication with pretty much everybody that lives in and around, and you pretty much follow the same moral philosophies. You know, you don't believe in killing people because they don't think that some afterlife exists or whatever the case may be. Yeah, I mean, that's basically a recipe for probably a recipe for disaster, and it generally doesn't create a strong society. And more times than not, strong societies are created through freedom of choice. I mean, if somebody wants to supplant themselves in a certain environment and they aren't able to communicate with anybody, they're just not on the same page. If they actually want to be in that environment, they probably will take the necessary efforts to get on the same page as the other people. Now, that's not to say you should just conform unconditionally to any environment you're in. I mean, you have to be sensible about things too, and look within yourself for the answers. Because you don't want to just follow the herd and do whatever they're doing and hop off bridges and all that goofy stuff. So, yeah, I mean, being an individual in a complicating world is not an easy thing, but life wasn't intended to be easy. It's a war. Every day is a battle, and we're just all soldiers in it. And at the end of the day, we all end up deceased anyway, so it's not so much mitigating casualties, because we all will eventually end up as casualties. It's just a matter of living as long as possible while being productive as possible. Now, if being really productive... One second, ladies and gentlemen. Hello? Maybe. It closes at noon. Yeah, I could probably drive it back and then I'll back it up by the garden and stuff. I'll back it up by the garden and then you can start it, run it back in the driveway, then it'll warm up a little bit. County Road 37, it's like a mile out of Buffalo with that big landfill next to it. Yes. Yeah, it's probably, yeah. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it's about 20. Yeah, it's 505 County Road 37. Yeah, I'm probably going to run over there in about 45 minutes or so. I mean, if they got the front end loader there, then they load it up right away and you leave. But if they don't, then you got to shovel it in. So I don't know, probably between 11 and 11:30. They're probably close to 11:30. Yeah. Alright, sounds like a plan. Well, I mean, we don't have to change it today if you don't want to get dirty and all that stuff. Yeah, hopefully, well, it shouldn't get too hot. Yeah, that works too. Yeah. Well, sometimes the OD doesn't even, well, not in this truck, but that old black truck, when I bought it, the overdrive didn't work, and you had to add like 2 quarts of transmission fluid when I bought it. Alright, sounds good. Bye. Sorry about that. That was a sponsor calling. Not really sure why they'd call on a Saturday, but you know, whatever works for people. I guess technically Sunday is the only Sabbath day, so people can still work on Saturday as well, ladies and gentlemen. But that being said, don't quite remember what topics we were discussing, but so one of the things that I suppose, yeah, the decay of society. So, see, one of the problems we have here is when people first started immigrating here to Minnesota, it would mostly be they would get a bunch of farmland and then they'd have a whole bunch of kids, or they'd take people off trains and stuff, and then they would work in farms. So you would have 2 people, about 10 kids, they'd all work on a farm, and then they would have to go find something better to do, but they couldn't. Most of them would have to, 1 or 2 of the kids might take over the farm, and then the rest of them would have to find something better to do. So, you know, then they have to go work in factories or in industry or do some less than desirable job, because you only, a very fortunate select few could continue to run a farm. So, you know, yeah, maybe it is an overpopulation thing, but you know, it's just, I don't know. You'd think people would have better things to do than to just sit around and have sex with each other and have kids, but unfortunately that doesn't appear to be the case. So, yeah, it's just a very complicating process, and everybody has their own individual choices and rights, and their rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and all that good fun stuff. So, you know, like I've said before, if you can eradicate addictions and just negative impulses, your brain will wire itself to be happy doing productive endeavors. Like, for example, say you do methamphetamines, and then you decide to kick the habit. So after, you know, yeah, you're gonna have the withdrawal syndromes. You know, you're gonna feel like the worst person in the world and all that. But at some point, you might feel good about digging up your garden, or you might feel good about working on cars or cleaning your garage. You know, I mean, it sounds silly right now, but believe it or not, when you don't do any negative addictions, your body wants to give you pleasure, so it's going to give it to you when you do productive endeavors. You know, like even something as simple as running or swimming, biking, crawling, rolling, climbing trees. Those activities will give you pleasure if you're eradicating your negative addictions. Now, negative addictions can hide in very obscure ways. I mean, it could be something like a food addiction. Maybe you're addicted to eating sugars or carbohydrates in general, or some type of fruit. Or now the sugars in fruit are a lot different than the sugars that are refined. That's probably the biggest tragedy of food labeling, how they can group together the fructose in fruit with just sugar in a bagel or a donut or candy. I mean, they're really not similar at all. I mean, maybe their chemical formula appears the same under a microscope, but in all reality, their biology is entirely different. And then I've tied, the 5 human senses. That can only pick up so many things. So there's also several other items of sensing that humans don't even have. So we just have to kind of assume to put our trust in the Almighty and not try to create our own artificial food that we can consume. And there's a little bit further progress on growing meat in a laboratory, how they extract cells out of some type of duck or a cow or lamb, and then they inject it with nutrients and grow it inside an actual lab. And that has red flag written all over it. But here's the thing, ladies and gentlemen, what the FDA, those testing sanctioning bodies do with genetically engineered and GMO, genetically modified crops, is they classify them as generally regarded as safe. So then the onus is on the manufacturer to prove, not to prove that they're safe, but there's no onus on the manufacturer, the producers of the food or the engineers of the food. The onus is on researchers to prove that they're dangerous. So rather, in a court of law, you're innocent until proven guilty. So basically, the FDA is saying genetic engineering is innocent until somebody proves that it's dangerous. Now you'd think it would be the other way around. You would assume that it's probably dangerous until you can prove unequivocally that it's safe. And there have been some studies on rats, and most of them get cancer and die off, so then they figure, we'll just throw these studies out. And it's just a sad state of affairs, ladies and gentlemen, and everything is very convoluted out there in the public, so you can never really, people that actually mean well, that work in government, they can't even get answers. So if you expect some random talk show host in Elk River to get answers, it's probably not going to happen. Now, maybe if I can land some big sponsors soon and pay off some high school kids to dig pretty deep and to find some very important, crucial knowledge, then yeah, maybe this show will be great, just decent, and you will be more illuminated as a listener. But that being said, kind of lost track of time there, but we're probably approaching a break pretty soon, and we're going to have good times, balls deep in the near future. The host has been pretty busy with sponsors lately, procuring funding to probably buy a camera, some type of sound and audio equipment, sound deadeners, a studio. If you want to run a quality talk show, it is a bit on the spendier side. Now, yeah, it's not too expensive to run this talk show, but he wants to get other guest hosts on the show and everything too. So yeah, it'll be a big riot, a controlled riot, not like the riots that the UN's try to cause inside inner cities to disrupt the population, but a positive riot with positive discourse and productive means and scholarly individuals involved. So it should definitely make you great again, make St. Cloud great again, and just be an overall positive experience when it finally does hit the airways. Now I know I've been harping on it for a while, but it's I'm really pumped about it, just excited to make St. Cloud great again. And that's the thing too, ladies and gentlemen. If somebody is attacking you, I'm not saying nobody's attacking St. Cloud, because it is a pretty peaceful community. But if somebody does attack your community, me personally, I would feel a responsibility to make it great again and to rid the foreign entities or evil people or soulless, heartless cowards that are trying to disrupt or destabilize it. That's just me. Not everybody really thinks that way. Now, one of the things though that I do see is corporations, especially attacking just children in general. Not necessarily children in St. Cloud, but children basically across the entire country of America. So, those corporations, we're going to have to come after them someday, ladies and gentlemen. Maybe in the near future, but we'll see. Not quite yet ready for it, so stay tuned for that, ladies and gentlemen. And we'll be back in 5 minutes. You're listening to Text Messages, episode 35. I'm the parasite of the show, Rick Tex. Welcome back to Text Messages, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Rick Text, the parasite of the show. Glad to have you here once again. It's Saturday morning, April 12, 2018. One day before Mother's Day, which unfortunately just seems to be one of those holidays to give companies excuses to market things and sell flowers and all this other useless garbage. So here's the thing, ladies and gentlemen. Out here, I got this giant rose bush. There's some tulips out front too. So, if I need to give flowers to anybody, I can just snip a rose off the rose bush and then just hand it to them. And then if you're looking for the rainbow in the rose, then you can probably look at the rose bush first. Well, that being said, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to have to get into some research topics here. So, the other day I was poking around on greenmedinfo.com. One of the articles that caught my eye, it said, not salt but sugar increases the risk for kidney stones. What you'll find is that sugar is basically at the culprit of everything. Rotten teeth, cancer, acne, fatigue. When your blood sugar spikes up and down with all the sugar in it, then it's basically like, think of your blood as a stream or a river. The sugar is basically polluting it. Well, you want it to be below 100, whatever those measurements are. So, so when you eat sugar, the thing, pretty much all refined sugar is in an inordinate proportion to what it's found in nature, because when you eat a fruit, a normal fruit, not those weird genetically engineered ones, there's a good amount of fiber in it. There's probably some little bit of fat, maybe a little bit of protein too, and then you got your sugar in it as well. Now, the fiber is meant to slow the digestion and absorption of the sugar so that it slowly enters your bloodstream, so your pancreas doesn't have to work on 12 cylinders to pump it all in there. Now, if you're eating Laffy Taffy, or if you're just drinking straight pop or sugar water, it's just going to jump into your blood right away. It'll cause havoc in all your organs and your internal systems, and in all reality, maybe not one of the studies, but what some of the hearsay as far as blood pressure is because when trans fats may be the culprit to it too, but apparently cholesterol is a healing. It heals the scar in your bloodstream. So when you eat sugar and trans fats and all this garbage, it scars up your blood tissues and vessels and arteries and all that. So then your cholesterol comes in and patches it up. So you might think, well, I test for high cholesterol, so shouldn't eat cholesterol anymore. That's absolutely the contrary to what you should be doing now. So high cholesterol is an indicator of bad things that are happening. So if you're eating a lot of trans fats and then you have high cholesterol in your blood, does that mean you should eat less cholesterol because the cholesterol is what's actually curing? Now your body synthesizes its own cholesterol. So if you eat no cholesterol, your body will still synthesize some. But the cholesterol is the curing effect on your bloodstream. It's not the deleterious effect. The deleterious effect is the trans fats or the sugars. It'd be like if you pick up a feral cat and it scratches you up and you start bleeding all over the place. So are you gonna and then you put hydrogen peroxide and Band-Aids and alcohol on it to disinfect it and cut the bleeding down and everything too. So the Band-Aids are basically the cholesterol, and the feral cat is basically the sugar. Now, are you gonna say, well, I should probably not put Band-Aids on and just let it bleed out all over the place? Or I should just not pick up the feral cat, then I won't have to use the Band-Aids in the first place. So, see, that's the thing, ladies and gentlemen. The pharmaceutical companies, they attack the symptoms because they know that if they only attack the symptoms, they have a perpetual customer and that they're legally obligated to make a profit. That's the unfortunate, sad reality of a corporation. They're soulless entities whose sole purpose is to make a profit. And if you're not able to accurately attack the core of the problem, you're never going to cure it. So if you just keep eating less and less cholesterol because you're told you have high cholesterol and you're susceptible to high blood pressure, heart disease, and all this other junk, and hardened arteries, you're never going to get cured unless you cut down, eradicate sugar and trans fat. Now, one of the biggest tragedies in the nutrition world is how if you look at just a basic nutrition label, it characterizes just regular fructose found in strawberries, blueberries. It classifies that as pretty much the same thing as the refined sugar that you'll find in candy. Or fats, saturated fats, monounsaturated, polyunsaturated, trans fats. They're all just considered quote-unquote fat. So if you, like me, I eat a whole bunch of fat. Probably eat about 4,000 calories a day, and most of it is fat. So you'd think I'd be a barrel ass just based on that. Now, obviously there are genetic factors too. I mean, somebody could eat the same amount of food as me, and maybe they would be a barrel ass. So it's not to say that, eating fat will make you fat or make you less fat. It's just being unhealthy, eating more calories than you burn. It's really that simple. And then if you're eating dirty food, then your body has to spend additional calories to get rid of the toxins, or your body will just store the toxins and let you be an unhealthy person. There's also that unfortunate possibility as well. So, fat from olive oil, when I say olive oil, I mean legitimate California olive oil, not the adulterated garbage that comes from Europe that's probably, half motor oil or something. Talking about real olive oil that comes from olives. So if you were to eat olives, then you get olive oil. So, yeah, I mean, if you're on that Greek diet or whatever, Mediterranean diet, you're probably better off just getting straight olives and eating them instead of the olive oil, because you never really know where the olive oil comes from, and it's hard to fake olives. Yeah, maybe they're growing some fake ones in a lab or hydroponically grown or whatever the case is, and they're probably not the healthiest things around. But it's probably healthier than drinking whatever the olive oil is from Italy and Europe and all those other questionable sources. So, yeah, I mean, the high fat, high protein, low carb diet it definitely works for a lot of people. It's absolutely worked for me. Really, the only complaint you hear from people is they feel it's too restrictive. So one of the ways that I ameliorate that restriction is to eat carbohydrates once, maybe twice a week. Then you can get in your fruits, your starchy vegetables, maybe some grain, rice, oats, something like that. Healthy grains, not conventionally grown with all the glyphosates and dangerous pesticides and herbicides and fertilizer on them. Healthy, locally organic grown sort. Minnesota wild rice or whatever. So the 1 or 2 days a week where you can load up on a variety of different foods and then get the micronutrients that you may not have gotten during the week when you're just eating cheese, tree nuts, meat, vegetables, and whatever else there is in that diet. Beans maybe. Beans have some carbohydrates, but they also got a lot of fiber in them as well. So I mean, yeah, it's just, see, any time you eat a certain, I mean, yeah, there are certain types of food that you just never get used to them. They're just always going to be disgusting. But I mean, if you just eat straight pecans for a couple weeks, eventually you're going to look forward to eating them and you're going to enjoy eating them. Not necessarily going to be addicted to them, but you're going to enjoy eating them just like you enjoy if you eat donuts now, or Laffy Taffy, or Mambas, or Smarties, or Skittles, Starburst. Just all those dangerous, drug-riddled. They probably got a whole bunch of weird chemicals in them too that, yeah, like, you look at a package of a candy, it'll say red 40, yellow 8, black 316. So, like, when you're just buying something, say you're on some Atkins diet and you're just eating straight cheese, what you'll see, you can always look at the package and if you're buying cheddar cheese, for example, there's yellow and there's white cheddar cheese. The white cheddar cheese has no color. The yellow cheddar cheese has the color yellow. Now, that's a simple thing that you're almost 100% sure you're better off just buying the white cheddar cheese. Now you might wonder, why in the hell would you even color it yellow in the first place if it's a potentially dangerous ingredient to put into it? I mean, I don't really have an answer to that, ladies and gentlemen, because colors in food don't really, the functionality in food is more important than colors in food. Oh yeah, if you saw a block of cheese, it's yellow, red, orange, yellow, blue, indigo, violet. Yeah, it's going to look pretty, it's going to look cute, funny, and fresh, but you really have to question the nutritional effects of all of those different colors, the colors of the rainbow. And more than likely, you're just better off sticking with the colorless foods. Now, yeah, I know it's bland and it's boring and all that, and it's mundane and monotonous, but you're going to be healthier. You don't have to worry. I mean, you might have an addiction to the yellow or orange color that they put in the cheddar cheese. So it's just a way to mitigate potential chemicals that could be introduced into your body, and which will ultimately help you to be great again too. So getting back to the sugar increases risk for kidney stone things. So what they found is that consuming high salt causes an increased loss of calcium in urine. Reducing salt will reduce amount of calcium in urine. So what that, kidney stones are basically an accumulation of calcium deposits inside your kidney. So increasing salt increases water, thus decreasing kidney stone. So there's a little bit of, yeah, maybe the producer should have wrote this down in a more clear manner. But what they found is that, so the high salt increases your loss of calcium in urine. Now that would indicate to you that if you're losing more if you're getting rid of more calcium in your urine, that you're probably getting rid of potential kidney stones. And the other thing you have to do is drink a lot of water too. That's what sodium does. It induces you to drink more water. It's just, it needs the electrolytes in to get rid of it. So increasing salt increases water, thus decreasing kidney stones. that's more or less what it's saying. When you increase your salt intake, then you're going to drink more water, and then you're going to get rid of the calcium too. So sodium is recognized as a physiological inhibitor of mineralization. So when the calcium does mineralize in your kidney, if you pump sodium into there, think of sodium as like a lubricant. So if you have all these calcium particles, then the sodium is in there lubricating well. They can't cluster together. Now, if there's no lubrication, then the calcium all cluster together, cause a kidney stone, and you'll feel like hell for a couple of weeks or months or until you want to get rid of it. So risk of kidney stones decreases with higher sodium to calcium ratio in urine. Common finding in kidney stone patients is an increased urinary calcium excretion, which seems to be driven by increased acid excretion in urine. Increasing sugar causes increasing acid and calcium. So yeah, I mean, it basically sums it up pretty good right there. More sugar you eat, you're going to have more acid, basically. Now, sugar increases reabsorption of sodium. Sugar increases reabsorption of sodium in kidneys, thus increasing calcium, or the mineralization. So excreting and reducing urine output, your urine is more, it decreases your urine output, so your urine is more concentrated. It doesn't expel the toxins as often. So water is, I said sodium before as a lubricant, but water is really the lubricant inside your system. And humans are like 70% water, so you absolutely need to have water. It's a very important thing to have. And that's healthy water too, not dirty water with fecal matter and all that stuff in it. Clean water, it filters out all the garbage, fluoride, chloride, and all the bacteria and nitrates and fungus and pesticides and parasites and everything. Yeah, you might need some 7-stage RO system or just some kit on the end of your faucet. Try to get soft water too if you can. I'll probably need to get a new water softener here someday. Norman Blacklock showed that the rise and fall in incidence of kidney stones before and after World War I and II, it tracked with the intake of sugar. So the more sugar people were eating, the more sugar people were buying, kidney stones rose. And less sugar people were buying and eating, it fell. And eating fruits and vegetables can reduce acid in urine, so it lowers the risk. So it's basically saying right there, the sugar in fruits and vegetables are not the same as refined table sugar, or whatever the case is. And unfortunately, they are sort of characterized and all commodulated into the same classification as far as the nutrient labels. But yeah, if you're eating natural sources of sugar, you're probably gonna be fine, especially if it's only once or twice a week. But most people can probably get away with eating them 7 days a week. And I find it odd because sometimes I'll talk to people who have been diagnosed with See, here's the thing that I don't understand, ladies and gentlemen. There's particular someone that I have come into contact with, and they were diagnosed as having diabetes, and supposedly it was bad news, but I thought it was great news because the more knowledge you know about yourself, the better choices you can make. I mean, if you know with absolute certainty that you have diabetes, and you know that, I probably shouldn't be eating carbohydrates or eat low carbohydrates, or eat good sources of carbohydrates like potatoes or the high glycemic index of fruits and vegetables, or whatever they're called. So, I mean, it's a long process to eradicate your addictions, but you have to accept and realize that you have an addiction. I mean, eating cereal, you look at the box and it says all these vitamins and minerals in it, and it says heart healthy on the front, and they show some toucan Sam on the front. He's laughing and smiling, so you think it's probably a healthy food item, but it's not. It's horrible. It's dumbing down society. It's making children miserable and have ADHD and all this other stuff. So if you know unequivocally that you have diabetes, you're diagnosed with diabetes, there's no reason why you can't just cut down on the carbohydrates. And probably within a month or two, you'll feel great again, and you'll wonder why you even ate them in the first place. But you still probably will, want to introduce micronutrients every once in a while. But it's overcoming addiction is a long process. And even today, I probably, yeah, you know, you have to sleep, eat, and work hard every day and all that good stuff. Yeah, I guess you can rest on Sunday, but yeah, I mean, life ain't easy. I mean, it's just trying to be healthy and being a productive member is really all you can do. And I mean, you know, it's not permanent either. So at least you got that to hang your hat on if you're a very miserable person. More than likely, if you are a miserable person, it's probably due to some health ailment. So yeah, eradicate that first, and then pretty much everything else will come into practice too. And it doesn't really matter where you're from, where you're going, where you've been. You know, if you're born in Bangladesh or if you're born in Ethiopia or Peru, you know, humans are humans. Most of them walk on two legs. There are exceptions, of course. So yeah, I mean, we all try to be healthy and be great again. And as long as you can do that, everything else will really fall into place, and then you can make your families great again too. So that being said, ladies and gentlemen, we're coming to the second break here. Yeah, I'm the parasite of the show, Rick Tex. We're going to have good times, balls deep in the future. The host is pretty busy right now satisfying sponsor deals. So once he gets that sort of ironed out, and then he gets a studio and a speaker and a microphone and a camera and maybe some parachutes, then he'll be able to make St. Cloud great again, along with a few guest hosts that he might decide to have as well. So that being said, we'll be back in about 4 minutes, ladies and gentlemen. Someone will lose, someone must win. Only the Welcome back to Text Messages, ladies and gentlemen. I'm the parasite of the show, Rick Tex. We're glad to have you here once again Saturday morning, May 12, 2018. Y'all have to make sure I end the show at an hour. It's going to have to go out to the compost site again today in Wright County here. It's probably about 20 miles from here. It closes at noon, so it's pretty important to get there before it closes. Otherwise, you don't get to access the facilities and ultimately don't get any compost. So that would be a tragic scenario. So, I went there Thursday morning and I picked up probably dumped about way more compost in the back of the pickup than what it can actually handle. I mean, the thing was squatting pretty good. It was probably about 3,000 pounds, and it's a half-ton pickup, so it's not, maybe it wasn't quite 3,000, maybe 2,000, but it was definitely a little bit more than I probably should have put back in there. So I'll probably have to make sure not to do that this time, and hopefully nothing was weakened from last time, and maybe something bad will happen this time. But that's what life is. You take risks to attain goals and to make your gardens great again. And another somber note is, it looks like about half of these indoor plants probably won't make it. Now, I don't know if you can blame it on the weird weather patterns and the lack of sun over the course of a few weeks, but they sprouted up, and then in this one container, pretty much all of them died right away. So I think the problem was it just wasn't in the sun. Should have probably put them outside a couple more times, but some will win, some will lose. Maybe you do need to have a law degree from Berkeley to figure out this stuff. I mean, it doesn't seem, some years it works out, some years it doesn't. So it's just it's a bit of a crapshoot. I'll probably just end up having to go to Fleet Farm or Menards or to that Malacca greenhouse guy and just buy maybe 100 starter plants from them. It tends to get a little expensive, but it's usually worth it. I mean, if you can spend $100 now and have all your vegetables for the winter, it's going to save a lot of money, because otherwise I'd probably spend about $1 on vegetables every day. And here's the thing. These are vegetables that probably got all the synthetic fertilizers, herbicides, and pesticides on them. So they're way different than the vegetables that you grow in your own garden. And that's the very important thing to know. They're probably grown in very nutrient void, soil that's void of nutrients, and hopefully the soil you got has a galore of nutrients too. The other thing you can do is maybe crush up some rocks and toss it in there, then that'll add some more minerals to the soil. Maybe get an anvil and just hammer some rocks or whatever. If you got some fancy machinery that has a lot of power and all that good stuff, just put it to use and make your gardening great again. But yeah, I mean, with the expansion of the garden this year in anticipation of having about 200 plants, you need a little bit more compost than last year, so a couple pickup loads. But it's good to have a big pickup too. I mean, last year was just some little Ford Rangers, so you couldn't really fit a whole lot in here. And the thing with compost is, the stuff I got on Thursday was a little bit more dense than I thought it was, so that's probably why I loaded down the pickup more than I should have. But normally it's pretty thin. It's got a lot of air inside of it, so it's fairly light stuff. I mean, you can pretty much fill up your whole pickup box with some types of compost you can, and it's still fairly light, so it's not going to cause any suspension parts to break or your wheels to blow out or anything like that. But if you start getting the more denser it gets, the worse. I mean, if you're loading sand into the back of a pickup, you really can't put a whole lot in there before it starts crouching down. I usually do the bounce test. You kind of bounce the suspension. If the truck still kind of wiggles around, then you got a little bit more room to play with. So that's always a good indicator. I mean, yeah, you don't have scales to park on when you're loading up dirt, so you got to use common sense, and that's why I always harp on common sense, ladies and gentlemen, because you can't always rely on scientific facts and data and research and analysis and tools and measurements and machinery, because a lot of times in life you're just going to need common sense. It's really that simple. Now, so probably, it's just a good idea to introduce compost to your garden, irregardless of what your soil is. I mean, if you got, back in the good old days, what we would do is in the center of the garden, we would load up all organic material. A lot of the neighbors who didn't feel the need to garden, they would mow their lawn, bag it up, and then pile it onto this big pile in the center of our garden. So by the end of the year, there's just some huge, massive heap of compost in the center. So then when springtime would come, you take the pitchforks and everything and you'd spread it out. And then some guy would come with a tiller, till it up, and then you're ready to go. It's very simple. We didn't have to pick up compost, but out here, nobody really mows with a bagger, and as an individual, I don't really make all that much compost, and most of it's just dumped in the chicken coop anyways. So yeah, then I got to make the couple trips a year to pick up additional compost. Now, if you work somewhere where they create compost, like just a lunchroom, just get some big container and write compost on it, and then say, this is what compost is. Tea bag scraps, food scraps, some type of biodegradable napkins, or probably just avoid napkins. I'm sure they're just all got weird dyes and chemicals, and probably all petroleum based, and VOCs and all that stuff too. So just try to get a good idea of what compost is, and then yeah, if you go to work 5 days a week, then stick the thing in your trunk every day, and so if you leave it there too long, it'll start to smell. But I mean, most people are probably receptive to the idea and will think it's pretty cool, and that you're making your communities great again and everything too. Yeah, you might have a few bad apples that are agitated by the idea and don't want to get involved, but I mean, here's the thing, ladies and gentlemen. In all endeavors of life, when you actually want to do ambitious things, there's always people that are going to try to hold you back. I mean, whether they're doing it consciously or not, it's just the fact of life. And what I've noticed too is that if you talk to 100 people and 2 of them are cool, then it was worth it. If you got to deal with 98 assholes to talk to 2 cool people, it's what you got to do. Now, more times than not, yeah, maybe it's your approach in talking to them, but you just got to be who you are, be true to yourself, true to your character, true to your country, train, eat your vitamins, say your prayers, and get after it. But yeah, with the compost thing, you absolutely need compost. You can get plant food too. That obviously makes a big difference, and manure. Manure is pretty lightweight, so you can fill up a box of a pickup with that, and then you should be fine. As long as it doesn't have a bunch of other weird stuff in it. But yeah, manure has a lot. It depends on what the animal is eating as well. I mean, it's all a little different. Chicken, pigs, llamas, horses, cattle, they're all little, they all digest things differently and in different ways, and they all have different diets. So yeah, it's just good to get healthy animals and healthy compost and everything too. And it would be nice to utilize human compost, but most humans probably have such a horrible diet that's why people probably don't compost their own fecal matter. But hopefully someday we'll get around to that too. Now, earlier I talked about this for a little bit, so I wanted to touch base on it just briefly. The lab-grown meat. Now, you've probably seen organic meat, pasture-raised, all that, locally grown. And you've probably seen factory meat. And you may have seen on the package, the FDA has seen no significant difference between organic, locally pasteurized meat and factory-raised meat. Now you can look at that and say, all right, good, I'll feel good about spending $1 on a pound of meat as opposed to $5 for the... Now, yeah, some of the organic stuff probably is a scam, like it's just a standard, But if you're buying food from Big Joe Rosso's farm, who's raising his own cattle, and you see them walk around every single day, they're laughing and smiling and eating grass every day, then yeah, they're probably healthy, and there are probably significant differences between that and factory farm meat. Now here's the thing, here's where it gets even more hairy. So, the FDA has pretty much lost all of its credibility, so you can't really... Yeah, there are some good people that work within the FDA, but for the most part, they're basically supported and bought and paid for by all corporations that are involved. They're basically regulating themselves. It'd be like... See, I don't really clean my house very often, and other people, they may be disturbed by that, but say the other people were the citizens, and I'm the corporation, and I'm the regulator. So I'm basically regulating how I clean my own house, and then the people visiting, customers, whatever, citizens, they're the ones that had to deal with the lack of cleanliness. Now, if the customers were the one regulating me, which is how you would think a government entity should be set up, then yeah, I'd probably have to clean the house more often. But with the FDA, which basically could probably just be the FU to citizens of the United States, they regulate themselves because they're funded, most government is funded by lobbyists and corporations. Like, for example, some senators, they'll enter the Senate, they won't really have much value to their name. But then 4 or 5, 8 years later, 30 years later, they'll be worth a couple $100 million. So, I mean, they must be quite the savvy business people, or have found some pretty rock solid investments to increase their net worth that much. But it is a bit sketchy when all those kickbacks are going on. So here's the thing. Lab-grown meat, it extracts cells from animals and cultures it to develop strands of muscle tissue. Now, I mean, it has disaster written all over it. It's basically, I suppose, yeah, you could probably just, it's not really technically genetically engineering. It's just some rudimentary way to grow muscle cells and to try to play God, basically, and to, I mean, you're going to mess up the entire biology and the enzymatic characteristics of the meat by doing that. And it's just one of them things where, yeah, you can be a smart, tough guy and say you know all this, that, and the other thing, and you're knowledgeable on the subject and everything. But I can almost guarantee you, any scientist that delves into studying living creatures will tell you, any honest one that's not completely arrogant and selfish and big-headed, they'll tell you the more they know, the more they realize what they don't know. Anyone who's a smart, down-to-earth person that's a cool, easy person to get along with and talk to, they'll probably tell you that. Now, that's not saying they're morons. That most of them are pretty highly intelligent, way smarter than I'll ever be, probably. Even if you had like 5 me's, I'm probably still not smarter than a lot of the guys that actually work on this science-related matters. But they'll tell you. More they know, the more they realize what they don't know. A lot of the advocates for lab-grown meat, they say it spares the animals from slaughter, requires less energy, less land, less methane, less greenhouse gases. So I mean, that is a pretty fair argument. It's just, if you don't like slaughtering animals and you want to use less energy and less land, and the more our population burgeons, we might be required to utilize all this stuff. But on the same hand, too, you just kind of wish that. See, here's the thing. In wealthy communities, people who actually understand how hard it is to be a healthy person, to work hard and be a productive member of society, they typically don't have many children. Now, yeah, back in the good old days, you had your farms, you had 10 kids and everything, and everybody did the work. But nowadays, when you got tractors and a lot of automation and machinery to help you out, hard-working people, they know how hard it is, even with the machinery and everything, too. So a lot of them just don't have time to pump out a bunch of random kids. But when you get people that are herded like cattle into some certain segments of the country or of the world, and they're just basically part of some sick social engineering experiment, and then where they're told that if kids are a paycheck, then your population starts to get out of control, and you got hundreds upon thousands of people living in some inner cities with absolutely no means of supporting themselves, so they have to rely on all these weird factory farms and just massively produced, sketchily produced meat and other types of food as well. So, I mean, if people could just show a little bit more restraint and common sense, and if they understood how difficult it is to support you. I don't even support myself out here. Most of the food, probably 90% of the food I get is from other hardworking men and women of America. It's not me, and I'm just one guy. If I had like 10 kids and 5 wives or whatever, then yeah, I'd absolutely, no way I'd be able to support that, or they would be able to support themselves, especially with just an acre of land out here. So yeah, it is good to understand how society works in that regard, and to know your spoke in the wheel, so to say. One of the problems with that, with this regulation, is they place it in a spending bill. And just with government in general, that's a big problem. They got these 500-page bills and just a whole bunch of garbage added onto it, so nobody really knows or probably cares what's in it. And it's just a total disaster. Government is just basically special lobbyists paying people to make laws. The lawmakers in Congress, they don't even write the bills. Say maybe Monsanto or Tyson Meats will write a bill, and then they'll hand it off to to John McCain and he'll sponsor the bill and everything, and then it'll pass or won't pass based on how many people were paid off to pass the bill. So sadly, that's how government works, ladies and gentlemen. But it looks like we've come to the conclusion of the show. You're listening to episode 35 of Text Messages on the Parasite. We're going to have good times, balls deep in the near future. The gentleman on that show is satisfying sponsorships right now, so hopefully once he gets that cleared and out of the way, and well, I mean, satisfying sponsorship like weightlifting, eating, sleeping, it's a lifetime endeavor. You know, it's a struggle. Life is a struggle, so you just enjoy it and then move on and try to make yourself great again. With that being said, ladies and gentlemen, got a busy morning. We'll be back tomorrow, though. You know, I'll have some research articles and some good quality topics to talk about. And unfortunately, NASCAR has moved to FSN, so unless you got cable, you can't really watch it, which pretty much means that I won't be watching it. But Princeton Speedway, I'll probably be watching that and making it great again and all that good stuff. So that being said, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for watching. I'll be back tomorrow.